Adeja Sterling.
Hi, I'm Destinee Filmore.
We're second year Mellon Undergraduate Curatorial Fellows at the High Museum of Art. I worked in the American department for the past 2 years with Dr. Stephanie Height.
And I spent the past 2 years in the Folk and Self-Taught Art department with Dr. Catherine Jemison.
Thank you guys so much for submitting your questions. I'm excited to answer them. I think there will be some fun ones.
Yeah, we're really excited and looking forward to it.
So I get this question a lot, which is why art? Why did you decide to study arts? What drew you to the subject matter? Why do you want to pursue a career in museums? And I think the answer to that question really is I took a study abroad trip after my freshman year of college, and it was to Paris. It was for the French language. I had been studying it for a long time. Up until that point, I had taken no art history classes, of course, no formal education in art, and I think I went, and it was just the most amazing time. Like, I spent most of my time in museums. I would say I went to a museum just about every single day I was there, which was about 6 to 8 weeks I was there, and I fell in love. That was what I enjoyed doing most. I didn't want to go to class. I didn't want to do anything else. I just wanted to be in museums, and so I came back and I declared my major, and that was that.
I decided to pursue a career in the art/museum world because I saw women who look like me, who have similar backgrounds, who were literally educated at the same college as me, really excelling in the field. And those same women actually poured into me and mentored me and inspired me to go along and pursue a career in museums, really in the art world generally, but especially in museums. And I also have this lifelong love of art and museums. I've been going to museums for as long as I can remember with my mom. I've also been studying and making art for pretty much all of my academic life, and so a career in this field seemed really natural, and it allows me to see things that I love every day, which is art, so that's why.
To answer why specifically curatorial studies, which is what I will be studying once I do my master's program, which I'm starting in August, I feel that this fellowship specifically has, it was a curatorial fellowship, so it's really been mostly about curation, about working in a museum, and I found that it's what I enjoy. Being in classes and writing papers was fun. I really love academia, but as of right now, I just think that's not what I want to pursue, and it's not something that brought me as much joy as curation. I think as someone who's done worked for magazines, graphic designs, who's also kind of has an art practice myself, I think curation specifically allows a certain amount of creativity and inspiration and just working with art that I think academia does not allow me to, or at least it's not the same specific access. I just like curating. I like working in museums right now. I think that's what I want to pursue a little bit further, but that could change. I'm really hoping my master's program can show me one way or another where maybe I should pursue academia, or maybe I should just keep going on this path.
I was inspired to study art history because the program at Spelman was really new and exciting. It's also incredibly unique. There's really nothing quite like it. And when the opportunity came for me to declare the major and to join in on this really long legacy of arts education at Spelman specifically, but even at the AUC more generally, I couldn't say no. It just all aligned so perfectly. I also wanted to formalize my knowledge of art history and to really dedicate myself to the path that I chose. So I'd learned bits and pieces of art history through curatorial studies classes, through art making classes that I took in high school, but never really seriously studied it. And so I took this as an opportunity, again, to really dedicate myself to the study of art history.
There's honestly two answers to this question. So in general, no, I don't think really anything besides a love, a passion, and some sort of education about art history is necessary to pursue a career in curation or art. But that is to say that I think it might be a tougher path to do that. For me, I feel like a degree was necessary. I didn't have really any connections to the art world. I didn't have, family members or friends or anyone connected to anything for there to be able for me to be a way to just, work my way up or get a foot in the door for me, I think I needed the education, the formal education, and I also needed this type of program.
This is a really tough question. I think that degrees are necessary depending on the type of art you're studying, also depending on the period of art you're studying. I think that curating is a skill not unlike playing music or playing a musical instrument, for instance. And although it can be learned independently, and people who learn independently can be quite successful, there's a history and a formalized system in place that also allows people to be educated and to be successful in that way too. So I think it honestly depends. There's a lot of independent curators who don't have a formalized background in curatorial studies, art history, that are super successful, and there are even more curators who do have formalized experience that are just as successful. So it honestly depends on the person. Again, it depends on the period that you're interested in studying and also the type of art that you're interested in studying and curating. So that's just my thoughts, but again, totally up to everybody, to each on their own.
This was my first curation gig, funny enough. I would say getting into curatorial jobs specifically is pretty hard, but I would say being very specific, knowing what you like, what you don't like, being able to make connections with curators, knowing a lot about the art you want to curate. So like I do American art, so that it was pretty important for me to know a bit about it already coming into the job. I mean, not everything, of course, this is a kind of a learning opportunity, but there was a real interest there was a passion for it, and I feel like that showed through. Of course, if you're younger, if you're an undergrad, you might not have a lot of experience, or you may not be able to land your first curation gig, but I think just being specific, knowing what you like, making connections, being honest, that's the best policy. A lot of questions about my curatorial process, primary sources of inspo, and specifically when curating, do you pick the theme first or the art first? So I would say usually the art comes first. There's usually something that I see, and then I feel like that gives me inspiration when I'm thinking about what the art means, what the artist was trying to display, if there's a deeper meaning behind it. And usually when you can figure that out with a piece of art, you usually start seeing similar patterns in other pieces of art. And then it kind of all things click together, things start fitting together in a way that it's like, oh, this is a theme that you could make a show out of, or this is a theme that I should pursue and do a little bit more research on. Other artists are probably dealing with the same thing. And as far as my curation process, I would say it usually just starts with finding that inspiration and then pursuing it, doing a ton of research, and just, research.
The highlight of working at the High for me has definitely been getting out of my comfort zone. When I came to this fellowship and when I came to the High, I had a really concrete interest in African American art, and since being here, I've been able to really expand that to think about other makers, other types of arts, and other societies that are also interesting to me. There's also been this amazing openness from staff at all levels and in various departments that has allowed me to learn so much about the way that museums operate, but also how individuals within this museum operate. And the really beautiful collection that we have, especially in the folk and self-taught art department, has been honestly one of my favorite parts about working here. I think that I can now really fully appreciate folk and self-taught art in a way that I hadn't before, but I also love our European collection, our African collection, the American collection, and the Deck Arts collection. They're all so amazing, and that's definitely been one of the highlights of working here.
I would say one of the best things about being able to work here is that this is a fellowship, so as much as it is a job, it's also a learning experience. Being able to grow as a curator, grow as a researcher, grow as an academic has been an irreplaceable experience. I just think there are no type of jobs like this. The fellowship has really helped me, and also just being surrounded by a team of mentors really that have been here to help me and guide me and push me forward and make me a wonderful candidate for grad school, for any other job that I ever feel like I should apply to. I think this has just been a great learning experience, and I think I've gotten so much actual experience from this job that I don't think I could have gotten anywhere else.
Okay, so this question is kind of unfair. I mean, it's like picking a favorite child. That's what everyone always says. But to name a few, I would say Stanley Whitney, Henry Asawa Tanner, Edmonia Lewis, David Drake, William Edmondson, and there's like about 100 more. Nellie Rowe is one of them, and so many others. We have a lot of really great art on view. I can't lie.
This show was it was a Dawood Bey show, who's an amazing African American photographer, usually based in New York, and I just think the photography was so moving. I mean, I saw this show. It was a very quiet and contemplative show, I would say, but it was amazing. I feel like that was one of the best exhibitions I've seen at the High, and I just think I was constantly drawn to it. I went to it every time I could. Every time I came to the High, it's not still up anymore, but every time I came to the High, I had to see the Dawood Bey show. It was fantastic. So for an art department that I'd like to work in and I haven't already, I would say I worked kind of in contemporary, very much so in American, but one that I feel like I haven't really gotten much experience with, but I really want to, is photography. I don't know much about photography. It's really a whole science in itself. But I'm always, I feel like, most moved by photography shows and by artists that work in that specific medium. So I would love to learn more, especially in grad school, about photography and about, like, I don't know, some specific readings. If you guys have anything that I should read, if you're like a photography buff, please let me know, put me on. I love photography. I don't know that much about it.
Okay, this is also a really tough one. Artists to look out for. This is hard, but I'll say Dimitri Burke, who is a recent graduate of Georgia State, is someone to look out for. He just accepted a residency at Met Gallery here in Atlanta. There's also David Alston, who was a fellow at the Atlanta Contemporary. There's Emmanuel Massey, who's a really great artist living and working in New York City, but is originally from DC. There's Maite Nasario, who's also an Atlanta-based artist. Jordan Dantzler, who's a Spelman graduate, recent graduate of Spelman College, and is about to enter into an MA program at the University of South Carolina. There's Kelly Taylor Mitchell, Nydia Blass, Radcliffe Bailey, and many more. So I don't know, but there's so many, and probably tons more, honestly.
So what I'm most excited about are the culture in New York, specifically the art culture. I'm excited to be able to like see art as it's coming out. Like, I'm excited to be able to go to go to show openings, go to museums as new artists emerge, go into galleries, and also just being around, in the center of the art world in America. I think that's going to be exciting, being around like most of the major museums in America, being around where a lot of artists live. I just think I haven't really experienced something like that before, coming from New Orleans and then to Atlanta. So I'm excited to be in a buzzy city, a really specifically art-run city. I think that'll be really cool. This is actually quite hard, but I would say my favorites are probably textiles, oil paint, and photography. Those are my top 3.
I wish that more people understood that museums are not neutral spaces. They do have social and political stances like many other institutions all around the world, but especially here in our country. And that museums are really meant to be spaces, I think, that anyone can enter and have an encounter with art. That's their purpose. I think that is the goal that almost all museums ought to aspire to, and that should be empowering to people of various backgrounds to come into them. They can be really intimidating, but once you get inside, it's just all about the experience that you have with the art. Those are really some things that I wish more people knew about museums.
Something that I wish more people understood about museums is that curators are not the only people that work here. There's actually entire teams that work to put exhibitions together, that work to get art up on the walls, that work to make sure like everyone has a safe and exciting experience when coming to the museums. I think curators are rock stars. I think obviously they get a lot of the attention in terms of like who we know about think about who works in a museum, but I think one thing that's super important is to know is that curators have teams behind them and are working in specialized teams that help make all of this look good. So that's one important thing to know about museums.
The process of becoming a Mellon Undergraduate Curatorial Fellow was kind of long, and I say that because I also think that all of the professional and academic experiences that I had before were preparing me for this opportunity. So I had 2 internships, one at Crystal Bridges Museum of American Art and one at the Cleveland Museum of Art before my time as a Mellon Fellow, and those opportunities allowed me to really, I think, understand how museums operate and understand exactly what I wanted from this opportunity. And so when it came time for me to apply for the fellowship, I think that made me a pretty strong applicant because I knew exactly what I wanted from this experience, and I've really gotten those opportunities. There's also really like the formal means of getting the fellowship, which is to participate in the 5-day-long summer academy program and then to apply for the fellowship. So it's a pretty straightforward process in that regard, and if you have any more questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
It's actually a really exciting question. I'm really a film buff. I love watching movies so much. Big Oscars fan. And I think that my favorite films visually and with the cinematography, I would have to say I'm really into period films. So I would say Anna Karenina is a huge one, Marie Antoinette, Atonement, and I would say Romeo plus Juliet, the Leo DiCaprio version when he was Romeo. I love all of those movies so much. And this is not really a period film, but Moonlight, that is one of my favorite films. It's so beautiful visually. I guess it is a period film if you count the 90s as a period.
Ooh, hard question. Daughters of the Dust, instantaneous one that it's just so beautiful. I also love the most recent Great Gatsby. I think it's really beautiful. And Moonlight, that movie, chef's kiss, so beautiful. I actually have a couple of resources about this already on my Instagram page that might be a little bit more thorough, but to answer your question really quickly, one, I'd spend some time on the website looking at the collection and the collection areas of the museum. Also see if you can find some information about their exhibition history and their exhibition schedule to see if there might be any connections between what you're interested in and what they're doing and what they have to offer. Also, of course, have your materials reviewed, hopefully by someone who's working in the field or by a professor in art history or curatorial studies, and then also talk to a recruiter if possible. Ask questions about what your day-to-day experience as an intern might look like to see, one, whether or not it would be a good fit for you, and then two, if you're actually going to be able to do the type of work that you're interested in doing in an internship program. Again, I talk about this a lot and have a lot more resources about this on my personal page, and I'm really dedicated to making this information more accessible to folks. So if you have any more questions, let me know. Okay, that was so fun. Thank you so much again for all of your questions. We really had a good time answering all of them. If you want to stay up to date with what we're doing, you can follow us here. We also have some really great projects going up. I know that the Nellie Rowe exhibition called Really Free, The Radical Art of Nellie Rowe is opening up in September. Hopefully I'll see you there. And yeah, I have a show that I've been working on with my mentor, Dr. Stephanie Height. It'll be up way in 2023, but hopefully you guys can see it when it's up. Otherwise, you can stay up to date with me as I journey to my MA program at the IFA next year. I think that's all that's going on with me so far. Yeah. Oh, and your installations.
Oh, and some installations that'll be up. There's going to be one for Martin Puryear. It's going to be up in the Contemporary Galleries. And there's one I'm working on, a small little rotation with Dr. Height, and it'll be up in the American Galleries.
Sounds great. Thank you again. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.